Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindie Chavez here. Today is Tuesday, July the 3rd, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Your first daily dose of happy for the day. And we hope you're happily getting through the week and enjoying the fact that tomorrow is Independence Day and we all get to go out and celebrate the birth of the U.S. and do the other things that we do, like barbecues and cookouts and fireworks and all the other stuff that happens on the 4th of July. So we hope you're looking forward to that. I know that I'm looking forward to cooler weather because the weather's been a little bit balmy, like on the sauna side the last few days. But I've been working on that one too. Cindie, I have to tell you, I've been trying to do my weather thing, and I did manage to get Friday to change. Friday is now showing better weather, but I still have expectations for Wednesday and Thursday. So I'm continuing to put out there, I want that cooler weather so that our gardening crews can work without getting overheated and so that we can get out and do things we like to do because nobody likes working in a sauna. That's not fun.
Oh, well, I'm telling you, as I was listening to you talk about the weather, I reached over and just opened the weather app on my phone just to see, because I haven't been paying attention. The last few days have been, just incredibly hot, like when the heat index is up in over 100. And for the next 5 days, it's all the same. It shows the high as 88 and the low is 73. And when you're used to it being 104, 88 seems so much better.
True. That is true. Yes, absolutely.
So I kind of went, oh, wow. Of course, we may just end up, that usually means that we're going to have rain. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I hadn't even, you said fireworks. I was like, oh, yeah.
That's right.
I hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah.
Hadn't even thought about it.
I mean, I commented to you before the show how I talked with my sister over the weekend. My sister lives in Virginia Beach, and that's about 600 miles south of here, something like that. And on the day that we talked over the weekend, our high in New England was 97. Her high in Virginia Beach was 87. So it's like the entire continent got flipped upside down.
Right? I really thought you were going to tell me that she, that it was 10 degrees hotter there for her.
Nope.
That would be, like normal.
Yeah, right. So, no, it's news when it's the other way around.
Oh, my goodness. So,
Very crazy.
It's been hot, but some of the flowers are really having a struggle, keeping up with the heat, and they look a little wilty. But the figs are the best figs I've ever had. And we finally, we put a bird net over the fig tree, and something still kept getting in there. We thought, okay, hopefully it's not mice, but it could be squirrels, something like kind of going under the net. So we got a bigger net that comes all the way down and touches the ground. And it's so big that all around the bottom, it's sort of bunched up. And I think that makes a real deterrent for any little critter that's trying to crawl in there. Mm-hmm. And since then, no figs have been touched, and they're all starting to ripen, and it's really a lot of fun.
Very good. So when do you get to have your first figs?
Well, they're kind of ripening where every day there's a few more that are ripe. So we've been picking them as they ripen, and they're really delicious. So now it looks like it's getting to the point where we may end up actually having a bunch of them ripen at once as it gets, further into the season. And then we can maybe pick a whole bunch, maybe even get the fig Newtons made.
There you go. Yeah. Now you're talking.
Yeah, right. So that would be exciting. And I wanted to tell you that this over the last few days, I can't remember when, maybe over the weekend, I had a nice compliment from someone commenting on my comment on an Instagram thread. And they said the podcast that you do with Walt Thiessen is making a big impact. They said, at least it is in my life. And I was like, oh, wow, fantastic. I didn't expect it. Yeah. Because the conversation was not about law of attraction or not, it was just, wow, okay. It was out of the blue, and it brought a big smile to my face.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, it's good to know that we have a positive impact. And we do know that. We get input from a lot of our listeners telling us how much they're enjoying the show. But every time we get a new one, it always feels good.
Yeah, it feels good. And, the thing is that that's our intent. So when you put the intention out and then you start to see the little waves of, appreciation coming back, that's really nice.
Absolutely so. Yeah. It's all good, as Wendy likes to say. And the fact that people are enjoying it and really getting their daily dose of happy. I mean, that was my goal when I brought you guys on. I mean, before it was just me and David, and then Joel came back and you guys came on, and then we expanded the whole podcast to many times a week instead of once a week. But one of the driving forces of that was I wanted to increase the amount of happiness in the world. And I knew that, the way law of attraction works, you're basically responsible for your own happiness. But that doesn't mean that I couldn't provide influence. And so I figured, well, let's bring on a whole bunch of coaches, and they'll definitely bring some good influence, and we'll just, influence as many people as we can. And it's happening. I love that. I love the fact that it's working out that way. So that's my daily dose of happy for me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear it. So, if you're listening and you want to let us know how the podcast is impacting you, we'd be really happy to hear it.
Absolutely.
However you tell us. Like I said, I was surprised for it to show up on Instagram. That was kind of neat.
You never know where it's going to come. I mean, we've gotten it in a number of different ways. I think that's the first one I've heard from Instagram, but we got it through Facebook. We've had tweets, we've had phone calls, we've had emails, we've had contact forms on the website, all kinds of ways. Very cool.
Oh, I wanted to share something else with you too. Speaking of social media, just because this was kind of fun. Last night on the way home from dinner, I was reading Twitter, and I saw this tweet that said, oh, and by the way, I wasn't the one driving. Just
Good.
So you know.
Glad to hear that.
I saw this tweet that said, don't love too soon. Don't trust too fast. Don't quit too early. Don't expect too high. Don't talk too much. And it had lots and lots of retweets and shares. But the first thing I thought of was how we've been talking about putting our phrases and words in the positive.
Right? Yeah.
So I tweeted back, always love, trust yourself, never quit, expect a miracle, speak your truth.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Over and over, it always surprises me how succinct and clear and powerful it is when we just put our words in the positive.
Yeah, isn't it so much more straightforward that way? It's so easy to grasp. The other way, it's like, whoa, oh my God, oh, I'm getting hit again. Oh, God. The way you expressed it, it's
so I was
wow, that's so
I have
smooth.
to share this with Walt next time I talk to him, because the time we did that in the Abraham book, where we kind of deconstructed that paragraph,
right?
And just in the process of doing that, it went from like a big paragraph to like 8 words.
Yep, exactly. It's an example of just how good we are as human beings to take the simplest concepts and make them as complex as possible.
Right. That's true too. That is so true. We do like to complicate things. I always laugh when I've heard Abraham say a few times when people, they say, well, you complain and you want more, so we give you a whole book. And then you say it's too complicated. And then we say, okay, so just here it is in a nutshell, find the better feeling thought. That's just it. We don't have to write books and books and books, but it's you. You want more. You want it to be more complicated.
Yeah, we are funny people. We really are. I think part of it is there's like I don't know what to call it. I don't want to use a disparaging term or even slightly disparaging term, so that's why I'm kind of stumbling here. But there is a tendency for human beings, when presented with something as powerful as the law of attraction, to find every way possible to basically prove to themselves that it doesn't work. And that's where a lot of the complexity comes from. Yeah,
it's called arguing for limitations.
Yes.
And we all do
phrase.
It.
Yep.
We all do it. The thing is if you can become aware. Now, here's the thing. It's not just becoming aware of when you're doing it. Like when someone tries to give you advice and the first 2 words of your reply are, yeah, but. And I think we've all done it. I mean, I'm raising my hand. I've done it.
Oh, me too.
It's like, oh, yeah, but blah, blah, blah. And believe me, anybody that's into astrology, I used to joke because I am an earth sign, and I used to live with a house full of people that were all fire signs. And I would joke that I was the one that would always throw the dirt on the fire, because anytime people got really overly excited about, oh, this is such a great idea, we could do this, I'm always the one that goes, well, you're going to need more time than that. or, right, Walt?
I know it well.
Book. You can't do a book in a deadline that short, Walt.
That's right. That can't be done.
But it's, I have a natural tendency to problem solve. And sometimes that means I'm looking for, okay, let's make sure we've covered all the bases and see what can go wrong. And so when I feel that's going over to the other side where I'm like arguing for limitations, it's not just being aware that, oh, I see what I'm doing here. I'm arguing for my own limitations, but it's also aware of the sensation in the body and the feelings that come and emotions that come along with it. And they're all related to resistance. So they don't feel good.
That's true.
And so it's like when you have that awareness and you can hone it in where you're aware of it pretty quickly, then you can pivot and stop arguing for your limitations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we do that. I do know why we do that, because one of our strongest drives is to keep ourselves safe. And it's that part of our brain at the base of the brain stem that gets called the reptilian brain. I call it the squirrel brain because of the size of it. It's about the size of what you would imagine a squirrel brain to be. And the only drives a squirrel has are to stay safe from the dog that's chasing it, and to find a nut so it can be fed, and to make baby squirrels. So that's it. It doesn't care about anything else.
Well, like climbing bird feeder poles to get at the bird seed. But other than that,
that's the nut. Yep, that's true. And so we have a part of our brain, the primal brain, that is responsible for subconsciously making a lot of decisions. And that part of our brain hates change. It does not like change, because even if where we are is a kind of crappy place, we know we can survive it because we've been here a while. So even if our relationship is not great, even if our job is not great, or where we live or whatever, the thought of changing it sometimes, it's like that part of our brain says, look, I know it's not the best, but we're cool here. Like, we haven't died yet, and we don't want to die. Right. So let's just stay here.
We set a high standard for ourselves, don't we?
Right. So it makes sense that when you bring up some concept like law of attraction that's really foreign to us most of the time when we first learn it, that our brain is like, yeah, no, I don't need to try it.
Yeah, right.
Oh, but it's worth trying.
It is worth trying. Interestingly enough, though, I mean, there does seem to be a positive side to that phenomenon that you're describing, because
it's called survival. That's why we're still all here.
Well, there is survival for sure, but I mean, there seems to be like another more practical day-to-day benefit to it, and the practical day-to-day benefit is, I'm not sure how to express it. It's the one that keeps us from. No, I want to find the positive way to say it. How do I say it in the positive? It always takes a minute to translate it,
It does.
Because we're so used to expressing things in the negative. Okay. How do I put this in the positive, Walt? It makes us look at, I can't do it.
Well, put it in the negative first, and then maybe we can translate. We'll get the positive translator.
There's got to be a way to do this. No, I was just thinking of the fact that when the law of attraction is operating at all times and we're not in alignment, we are basically attracting what we don't want. When we are in alignment, we're attracting what we do want. And if we are in a place where we're faced with a new possibility and we're not in alignment, then basically we're saving ourselves from attracting something we don't want because we're cautious about doing something for a survival reason. That's what I was trying to get to. But how do you phrase that in the positive?
Well, I'll tell you, the way I put it is that phenomenon is, a lot of times I hear, especially some coaches, people say that someone is sabotaging themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say we don't self-sabotage. We don't sabotage ourselves. We protect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it is that we're protecting ourselves from a perceived, happening, some fear that we have. So I think that's pretty positive that we're attempting to protect ourselves pretty much all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I guess what I'm driving at, though, is we're protecting ourselves from ourselves because we're the ones that are out of alignment.
Right. And you're right about that. It's like we are creating, we are attracting all the time.
Yeah.
We attract whatever we are in alignment with.
Right.
And most of the time we're in alignment with what we're familiar with, whether it's comfortable or not. So we just keep attracting that familiar situation over and over.
But boy, oh boy, I mean, just the fact that I had so much trouble finding a way to express that in the positive, does that illustrate better than anything that we've talked about so far just how negatively oriented we are? I mean, we have it so negatively oriented that we can't find a way out of the negative way of saying it. I mean,
well, yeah, like that one day you said, oh, see this paragraph? That's the one thing about Abraham is often everything is in the negative. So let's just go ahead and translate it. And like my brain just stopped.
Yeah, right.
I just had to take a moment and like, okay, it was like a puzzle. Okay, I can figure this out. So
yes, exactly.
It is really interesting. And it just tells me that it's not where our usual familiar language patterns go. And so, but boy, I'm telling you, when every time I've done it, a handful of times that I've taken a paragraph or a phrase and switched it to what it would sound like if it wasn't don't do this and don't do that and put it in the positive, it's always so much clearer.
There's another interesting phenomenon that goes along with this. We've all heard of the double negative, right? I won't not do that or something along that line.
Right.
Have you ever heard of a double positive? I mean, when do we ever say double positives? Not very often.
I don't know.
I mean, a double positive would be, I like to do that, and I like to do it often because I enjoy it, and it's fun, and it's great. That's like a triple positive, right?
Yeah.
We don't usually do things that way. We usually don't say things that way. At most of us might get one positive in. But double positives, that's almost outside of our range of understanding.
That's funny.
Yes.
Ooh, opening up all of these brain channels this morning.
Well, you have to do that. Yeah, I mean, it's important to do.
It's good.
Yeah, it's how we stretch ourselves, make ourselves get into that better feeling place. Because that's what we're trying to do anyway. We're trying to get aligned, right? We're trying to get to that good feeling place.
Yeah, and that's why this exercise of putting things in the positive makes so much sense to me, because it's clearer and easier. And that's sort of my motto, easy peasy. If there's a way to get there easier, then that makes more sense, because we'll do it more often. So I like it. I like it a lot.
I also like the fact that we have so many listeners who like to listen to us try to find the positive way of expressing double, triple, and quadruple negatives. And there are some of them who are actually new. And so I wanted to take a moment just to say, first of all, welcome. And second of all, join those of us who are regular subscribers. And we have a lot of them. And they're subscribing primarily because they want to binge listen and they want to listen to all the episodes. We're doing 45 episodes a month. So you get a lot of content when you subscribe. You can basically listen for most of a weekend and just get through what was done in the past week, let alone what happened over the last 6 months. So there's plenty of material, lots of material. And becoming a subscriber is really easy. We make it as easy as possible. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. Except, well, it costs you about a minute of time, and I think most of us can spare a minute of time in order to get a whole bunch of daily doses of happy coming into our lives. So just go to the homepage, loatoday.net. Right there, you'll see the instructions on how to subscribe, and there are separate instructions for whether you have an Android phone or an Apple iPhone. Those are the most common ways people subscribe. Or you can also do it with a desktop or a laptop or a tablet or whatever, but mostly it's usually an iPhone or an Android. And again, the instructions are right there. They're real simple, takes a minute. And when you're done, you're going to get all of our episodes streaming right to your phone on demand so that you can play them whenever you want to. So please subscribe and then share the fact that you've done it with your friends.
Yes. Let us know.
And let us know. Like your friend on Instagram who you don't really know who said, whoa, you're making a big impact on our lives. And
that's the best thing ever to hear. So.
Oh, it feels so good. And shout out to that person. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So we have been traveling through the #1 New York Times bestseller, Money and the Law of Attraction, Learning to Attract Wealth, Health, and Happiness.
I like that phrase, traveling through. That was good. I like that.
Yeah. And we've been reading it together. We've been throwing in a lot of our own commentary and conversation about what we're reading. And so if you subscribe, all those past podcasts where we're talking about money and the law of attraction and will be still available. Because right now, in the paperback version anyway, we're on page 132. We're about halfway through, and we're talking about well-being. And this particular section, Jerry's asking a question about, are arthritis and Alzheimer's disease somehow resolvable? So that's where we're starting. There's a lot we've covered already. So that subscription will allow you to go back and catch up.
And you can always count on Jerry Hicks to get at the most difficult, uncomfortable, frustrating possible questions that you could possibly raise. And he's doing it once again. So cheers, Jerry.
Okay, so Walt, you get to read Jerry's part.
Okay, so Jerry says, can the gnarled joints caused by arthritis or the memory loss caused by Alzheimer's be resolved? In other words, is it possible to recover from those types of illnesses at whatever age?
And Abraham answers, the conditions of your physical body truly are vibrational indicators of the balance of your thoughts. And so when you change your thoughts, the indicators must change also. The only reason that some diseases seem stubborn and unchangeable is because your thoughts are often stubborn and unchanging. Most people learn their patterns of counterproductive thought, often based on truths, and truths is in quotation marks, truths they have witnessed or learned from others. And as they hold stubbornly to those patterns of thought, which do not serve them, they then experience the result of those thoughts. And then an uncomfortable cycle occurs where they think about unwanted things, valid, true, unwanted things. And in doing so, by the law of attraction, they prevent wanted things from coming into their experience and allow unwanted things to come instead. Then they focus even more upon those unwanted things, causing more unwanted things to come.
We got to stop right there, because I remember the first time I heard this concept, I said to myself, why would anyone ask for an unwanted thing?
Well, I like that they mentioned here that, number one, that they are, quote, truths.
Right.
And we hear this all the time with someone that says, no, I mean, it really did happen. This is what's going on. I have the test result or whatever. It's like, it's true. But also that in doing that, focusing on the unwanted things, that they prevent wanted things from coming. And it says they allow unwanted things to come instead. And when I read that, I was thinking, the wanted things are, for lack of a better word, they're trying to come. They are coming. The wanted things are there on their way, trying to flow in. But we prevent them with the focus on the unwanted, and we allow those things instead. It'd be like if there were two people coming to the door, and one of them was someone we wanted to come in, and the other one was some scary person that we didn't feel like we wanted to let in, but we were so focused on him that, we just opened the door and ushered the person in we didn't want to come in. The other one was standing right there. I mean, I see that with all kinds of things. It's that allowing. Like you said, who would ask for something they didn't want?
Right, exactly.
And that's why I think the book, was Ask and It Is Given their first book?
I think it was, yes.
And so the whole concept of recognizing that, I'm actually asking by putting my focus there. Because it might not seem like an ask. I mean, really, as a life coach, I have heard people say, I didn't ask for this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't ask for this. Well, sometimes we do.
It was the guy standing behind you, right?
So he goes on to say, or Abraham goes on to say, you can accomplish change in every experience, but you have to begin to see your world differently. You have to tell the story the way you want to see it, or the way you want it to be, rather than like it is. When you choose the direction of your thoughts and conversations by the way they feel as you think them or speak them, then you begin to deliberately offer vibrations. You are vibrational beings, whether you know it or not, and the law of attraction is eternally responding to the vibrations you are offering. So I want to read that sentence again.
Mm-hmm.
When you choose the direction of your thoughts and conversations by the way they feel as you think them or speak them, then you begin to deliberately offer vibrations. And that's what I was speaking about before we got into the book today, when we were talking about arguing for limitations.
Mm-hmm.
When I start, it's not that every single time I bring up a reason that may be important to consider, I'm arguing for a limitation. But I know what it feels like in my body when I am resisting and when I'm arguing for my limitations from that point. And that's what I think is important, because when you choose the direction of your thoughts and conversations by the way they feel as you think them or speak them. And I know what resistance feels like, and I don't like it at all. So it's a good motivator for me to pivot when I notice it.
When I was, again, in my early stages learning this stuff, I didn't know what resistance felt like. I couldn't put a feeling to it. So if you were talking to my older, or I guess my younger me, and explained to me what resistance feels like, what would you say?
That's a really great question. But I think it feels like constriction. Like, in other words, when you're in a car and you're not the driver, and the driver suddenly says, brace yourself. There's something that takes place in your body. You tense up your muscles. You may feel tightness in your solar plexus. And of course, that's an extreme example, because, brace yourself. You may tighten up your whole body, which probably isn't the right thing to do if you're about ready to get into a car accident, by the way. But
yes, right.
But I think that resistance is like that. One thing I notice when you talk about stress, and the idea that stress is responsible for so many ailments, and we are talking about well-being, is that there is actually something called bracing. And it's when it presents itself by, we're holding our shoulders up. I remember when my boys were kids, and I used to help coach their baseball team. And all the kids were like, let's say, 4th grade, 5th grade. And there was one little boy that would come to practice, and his shoulders were just hunched up next to his ears almost. And I always could tell that he was just really, really stressed. But here's the thing. Most of us are bracing a little bit. And if you can drop your shoulders at all, like sometimes in a yoga class, the instructor might have us take a deep breath and then just let your shoulders relax. When I record meditations, that's one thing I always put in there, is to just let your jaw relax, let your shoulders relax, because those are areas where we hold tension. If you can drop your shoulders, even an imperceptible amount, like no one else can notice, but you can feel them drop, then you're holding a great deal of stress. And so that bracing, I think it's a key indicator of resistance. And so when it's just like, how do you know? You start paying attention. You recognize what your body feels like when you're talking about certain things. And, there's a famous coach. She was Oprah's coach, Martha Beck. One of the things I've heard her say, she has a little phrase, shackles on, shackles off. And so it's like when someone talks about a certain thing or presents to you a certain idea or says, hey, let's do this, or would you be interested in doing this? How do you feel? Shackles on, shackles off. I have a friend that says, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no.
That's a good one too.
I like to say a full body yes. It's like one of those things where, oh yes, I want to do this. Like there's no resistance in that. So we've all had an experience where we can point to and say, we know we resisted, right? Somebody wanted us to do a certain thing or go a certain place or take a certain job or whatever. And we were like, I don't know if I want to do that. So, and that's okay. Like it's okay to not want to say yes to every single thing. But the next time that you're in a position where you're not quite sure of something or you don't think you want to do something, don't just pay attention to what your mind is thinking. Pay attention to what your body is saying to you as well. And you'll start to recognize what resistance feels like.
Yeah. And actually you used the word a number of times that ultimately became my own answer to the question. You used the word stress. And I know what stress feels like. So that became my answer. What does resistance feels like? It feels like stress.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty close.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing that I always like to point out, because if you're new to law of attraction thinking and teaching, you're going to hear about resistance a lot, right? Because I remember one time hearing Esther Hicks say, you just think you need more money. You think you need a better relationship. You think you need more of this and more of that. You don't need more of anything. You just need less resistance.
Right.
Right. And so what I think is important to remember is that resistance shows up in two different ways. It shows up as aversion, as well as, attachment. So it's easy to picture saying no as resistance. Like, I'm wanting you to do something and you're resisting. You're telling me no. That's easy to understand. But when we get overly attached to an outcome, and that's when we're sort of saying yes, but it's that desperate yes. It's that grasping, yes, this has to happen. I have to have it this way. I can't be happy until this happens. I need this to happen. That's also resistance.
Oh, I'd say that's even a higher level of stress.
Well, the tricky part about it, you could be right there. And the tricky part is that oftentimes when someone is so attached, they think they're allowing. They think they're saying, yes, no, I do want it.
I love the way you said that. Yes, no.
Want it. Right?
I love the way you said that. Yes, no. Yes, no.
So you're saying to them, well, there's a lot of resistance. I mean, I've had this happen in a coaching session. I can hear the resistance in your body. I'm not resisting anything. I want this to happen. Okay. Over attachment to the outcome. So letting go of attachment to the outcome is just as much, part of non-resistance as letting go of an aversion to an outcome.
Yeah, I would say it's more important, and I agree with you that it is one that we consider to be somewhat counterintuitive, because I want it. So how can, I know I want it. I'm putting out very clearly that I want it. How can my attachment to it be a form of resistance? That's probably the harder part of the concept. That's why for me the idea of stress made it easier for me to kind of deal with this stuff. So that if I had an attachment and I tried to analyze it as an attachment, I couldn't really get very far. But if I could analyze it as stress, I could say, well, yeah, that definitely makes me feel stressed. Okay, well, then what do I have to do about that? Well, I have to de-stress. Okay, how do I de-stress? Well, I do everything I can to make myself happier. So I do all my happy-making things. And in the process of doing that, I slowly end up, peeling my fingers away from the thing that I am grasping with all my strength. And when I do that, then all of a sudden I relax. And when I do that, all of a sudden it starts to show up. So that's thinking of it as stress is my way of getting around the issue of, but I don't understand. I want the thing to come. What makes you think I don't want it to come? How can attachment to it be that I don't want it to come? I don't get messed up in that. I just go with, I'm feeling stressed. I got to de-stress.
And I think that stress in the body, probably shows up a little differently for everybody.
Probably.
I know for me, I start to feel it in my shoulders and in my solar plexus. Someone else may get a stress headache. I mean, it shows up, and it can be really subtle, which is why it's important to pay attention.
Oh, yeah.
So that you get really familiar with it, because then when it's just a slight bit of resistance, you notice it and to drop it.
Yeah, for me, it's my jaw. At the moment that I feel my jaw start to tighten, it's like, okay.
Yeah. That's a good one to pay attention to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, especially when, for years, I actually had a teeth clenching thing going on. So it became very evident that I was clenching my jaw.
So when you choose the direction of your thoughts and conversations by the way they feel, as you think them or speak them, that's when you're beginning to deliberately offer the vibration.
All right.
So Jerry goes on.
Yeah, Jerry, of course, isn't done. I mean, Jerry wants to get the nitpick of every possible pick you can knit. So, or is it every knit you can pick? Anyway, Jerry says, can chemicals such as alcohol, nicotine, or cocaine negatively affect the body? This is an interesting question. I gotta say, that's just an interesting question to ask a non-physical being. That's the question I expect to have them ask, a doctor or a researcher. They're asking a non-physical being. Like, really?
I never thought about that. That's hysterical.
I mean, we are strange people. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. Abraham says your physical wellness is affected much more by your vibrational balance than it is by the things that you put into your body. And even more significant to your question is the fact that from your place of vibrational alignment, you would not feel inclined toward any substance that would detract from balance. Almost without exception, the seeking of those substances comes from a place of less alignment. In fact, the impulse to participate in those substances comes from a desire to fill the void that is present because of the vibrational imbalance.
They say almost, I say 100%.
Very interesting, this idea of, again, filling the void.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of my favorite quotes in this whole book was where we talked about about the void, right? About wanting to fill that void. And I'm kind of looking for it now. I know I marked it. I need to put a better mark on it. But basically what it was is that the void gets filled with the alignment and then the things flow.
Mm.
It's our alignment that fills the void. It's not those things.
Right.
Like we think my life is empty and I need a lover and I need more money and I need better health and I need all these things and then I wouldn't feel this void. And they say, no, when you fill the void with the good feeling thoughts, then those things come in. They come in when there isn't a void.
Well, that's the ultimate expression of the contradiction in our thinking. We believe that thoughts follow things, when in fact Abraham's teaching us, no, it's the other way around. Things follow thoughts. It's the thought that comes first, and we think, well, it's the thing that comes first. The thing is what creates the thought. That's what inspires the thought. And like, no, it's the other way around. But that's not the way it seems to us.
Yeah, so I want to read it because I found it, and I think it's probably impacted me more than anything in this book so far.
Okay.
Which is saying a lot. It says, offering better feeling thoughts, telling a different story, looking for positive aspects, pivoting to the subject of what you really do want, looking for positive what ifs. That is how you fill that void.
Mm.
And when you do, a most interesting thing will occur in your experience. The things you have wanted will begin to flood into your experience. But these things you have been wanting will flood in not to fill the void, because that void no longer exists. They flow in because your void no longer exists. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah.
And so if Abraham is saying that most of the time, the desire for seeking of substances comes from a place of less alignment. And it says, in fact, the impulse to participate in those substances comes from a desire to fill the void that is present. And, my thought about that is that when we fill the void with good feeling thoughts, like I just read in the other section,
Mm-hmm.
then that void is filled with good feeling thoughts and the things rush in that we've been wanting. But if we fill the void with other things, they're talking about trying to fill the void.
Yes.
And the void is there because of vibrational imbalance. So when we fill it by being aligned, and it automatically fills in, and then the good things we want come. If we fill it with misalignment, whatever that is, it could be substances. It also could be just constant complaining or whatever kind of misalignment that we find. What is going to come to us then? It's not going to be all the things we think we've been wanting.
This is true.
Because we're so out of alignment.
It's also another truth in there that they didn't actually state outright, but it's implied. And that truth is this, and it's one that I noticed way back in my days when I was experimenting with drugs in my early 20s, late teens. And that was, when you use a substance like that to fill the void never gets filled.
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't matter how
And
much you take. It never gets filled.
no. And so that's why there's the constant going back.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
read a really interesting article about, it talked about drug addiction, and it talked about the amount of people that were in Vietnam that were addicted to drugs,
Mm-hmm.
that when they came back from the war, that many of them just dropped their addiction, that it wasn't a struggle or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about being addicted to heroin.
Mm-hmm.
But what they talked about was the common denominator in people that were able to not to drop an addiction was community, and that it had to do with whether they were isolated or whether they were actively connecting with other people. And I thought that was really interesting because once again, it kind of goes against the grain of what we would normally think. But once again, we're back to what we're aligning with.
Right. Yeah, because clearly those community situations were positive for them. If they were negative, it wouldn't have worked. But they were positive.
Right. And so the connection in the community, which is like why we do the podcast.
Yeah.
It's consciously choosing behaviors and, activities that we know are going to align us with our higher, wiser self,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
our inner being.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really, really wonderful to recognize,
Mm-hmm.
that addictions and, arthritis and Alzheimer's, all these things that we're talking about, there is a way out from them. There is healing for them. And it's all found in alignment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that alignment is critically important. Of course, now Jerry is not yet done asking non-physical beings about physical health. So we have another section to go through. This is about exercise and nutrition as health factors. And Jerry asks, point blank, does better nutrition or more exercise add to our health?
Abraham says, you may have noticed that there are those who are very deliberate about food and exercise, whose physical well-being is obvious. And there are those who seem to be offering tremendous effort regarding food and exercise, who struggle for years to gain benefit and still have no success in maintaining their physical well-being. What you do in terms of action is far less important than thoughts you think, the way you feel, your vibrational balance, or the story you tell. When you take the time to find vibrational balance, the physical effort you apply will yield you wonderful results. But if you do not tend to your vibrational balance first, there's not enough action in the world to compensate for that misaligned energy. From your place of alignment, you will feel inspired to the beneficial behavior, just as from your place of misalignment, you are inspired to detrimental behavior.
I discovered what they're talking about there very early in my experience of doing regular daily walking. Because in that experience, I learned that if I just went out to take the walk and didn't do anything along the way to make myself happy, the walk was less than satisfying. But on those occasions where somewhere during the walk I did or thought or experienced something to make me feel better, all of a sudden the walk was a better walk. And at one point, I got through some support from my wife, I actually got to the point where I decided to start the walk. As soon as I started doing the walk, I got myself doing an exercise of appreciating, the sunlight and the green trees and the comfortable breeze and all the other stuff that was going on that was really very good and desirable and fun. And when I did that, I got the best walks and I got the most out of them. So I completely agree with what they're saying.
I think what's interesting is, they're not saying that your nutrition or your activity level or whatever isn't going to have any kind of impact.
Right.
But they're saying that if you find the place of alignment first, then you will have much better results.
Exactly.
And, it reminds me of, really anything else that we're trying to achieve and struggling to achieve. And we start telling that story, and we tell this same story of defeat over and over. And, they talked about in one of our sections earlier, they used the word truth, but it was in quotation marks. And one of the things I know from coaching people is that there's something that we call an assumption, right? And that is really, really hard to get past assumptions. And it's because they're always built on past experience. So if someone says, I've tried every diet and I still don't lose weight. And so then they try another one and it doesn't work. And so they add that to the pile of proof or evidence that these things don't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making air quotes or scare quotes, right? Truth. But I mean, that's their truth because that's exactly what they experience. It's very hard at that point. And Abraham talks about this.
And it matches their story perfectly. I mean, their
building up resistance.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Totally accurate.
And so I think that it always comes back to alignment first. Alignment to the story that we want to tell. Alignment to the better feeling thoughts.
Very true. Now, we do get actually a little bit of a clue in this next section that Abraham does have a sense of humor. I have to say the humor that they express through Esther during the live workshops is actually better than what you find in the book, or in the books, I should say. And this particular one is another example of it because they tell a joke and it falls flat and they have to explain that's a joke. And that, of course, is like, the death knell of a joke. The moment you have to explain that it's a joke, you've already lost.
Yeah, yeah.
So, part of the trials and tribulations of being a non-physical being is trying to get the joke right. But anyway, Jerry continues the conversation by saying, I remember hearing a line from Sir Winston Churchill, the British leader during World War II. He said, I never run if I can walk, and I never walk if I can stand, or stand if I can sit, or sit if I can lie down. And he always smoked a big cigar. He lived to be 90 years of age, and as far as I know, was in good health. But his lifestyle was clearly not what we consider today to be healthy. So was it just a belief factor then?
And Abraham says, leaving at such an early age? Fun.
Oh, it's a joke.
Oh, he lived to be 90. The reason that so many are confused about the correct behavior for healthy living is because they're only factoring in behavior and they're leaving out the part of the equation that's most responsible for every outcome. The way you think, the emotions you feel, and the story you tell.
It's one of those times where they answer the question directly, but it seems like they indirectly answered it. Because he actually asked about Winston Churchill, and was that just a belief factor? And what Abraham answered was, we leave out the part about what we think, and the emotions that we feel, and the story that we tell. They don't actually talk about belief. But that's okay.
I think that the story that we tell always stems from our beliefs.
Of course it does, yeah, and that's the indirect factor. Yeah.
What's interesting is that this all goes back again. We're talking about well-being, health, and well-being, but the reason so many are confused about the correct behavior for healthy living is because they are only factoring in behavior. So once again, we're back to action.
Right.
And so many times when we're wanting a certain thing, we're wanting to create a certain thing, we want an outcome, the first question in my mind is often, okay, what do I need to do? It's that action, what can I do to make this happen? What do I need to do next? And it's, that's a fine question as long as you've done the alignment work first.
Well, along this theme of Jerry asking non-physical beings about physical health, he's like a dog with a bone. He doesn't like to let go of it. So he continues by saying, if a person seems to be in good health, but feels tired or listless most of the time, what would you suggest as a solution?
Oh, yeah. When I saw that headline, when I saw the little subtitle, what if a healthy person feels tired? I thought, oh, don't ask Abraham about sleep.
Yeah.
Abraham says people often refer to that state of being tired or listless as a state of low energy. And that's really a good way of saying it. While you cannot cut yourself off from your energy source, when you offer thoughts that contradict that source, your resulting feeling is one of resistance or low energy. The way you feel is always about the degree to which you are in alignment or out of alignment with your source. No exceptions. As you tell the story of what you want, which is the story source within you is always telling, you feel happy and energized. The feeling of low energy is always a result of telling a different story than the expanded source energy part of you is telling. When you tell a story that focuses upon the positive aspects of your life, you feel energized. When you tell a story that focuses upon the negative aspects, you feel enervated. When you focus upon the absence of something that you desire in your present experience, you feel negative emotion. When you imagine an improved condition, you feel positive emotion. The way you feel is always about the relationship between the object of your attention and your true desire. Giving thought to what is wanted will give you the invigoration that you seek. And I'm just going to throw in, or sometimes you've just been up for so many hours and you're tired.
In other words, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Right. But of course, Jerry is asking, though, what about a person that seems to be in good health but just feels tired or listless most of the time? So I get that.
That's a different thing. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds me of the story that Mike Dooley told about when I think I have this right, but I think he was like 12 years old and an uncle or someone came to stay with their family. And he said that this uncle would walk around all day long saying, "Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I'm so exhausted. I'm really tired." And he said, as a 12-year-old, he began to say, "Oh, me too. I'm feeling so tired." And I think the story goes that like a friend wanted him to come out and play or something. And he was like, "Oh, I'm just tired." And he said, as a 12-year-old, it hit him. What's wrong with me? Like, I'm never tired like this. But it's just since this person's been staying with us and he tells this story all the time. Like, this isn't even my story. And he realized it was just from agreeing with someone saying, "Oh, I know, me too. Yeah, I feel tired too." I thought, well, that's really powerful.
It is.
So maybe it's just changing the story.
Well, it's a great illustration of just how powerful the tell the story over and over again to acquire belief effect works. Except that it works both ways. You have to be careful about which story you're telling, because if you keep telling yourself a story about how tired you are, you're going to feel tired. You could always reverse the story and say, "Well, I feel really great," and then you can start feeling great. They work in both directions. But
well, from someone who has experienced insomnia, I will say that that's one of the things that I did when I realized that I was kind of, of course, I wasn't sleeping well at all. And after 3 or 4 nights in a row of sleeping 2 hours a night, it's pretty awful. And so, yeah, I was dragging around with "Oh, I'm so tired. I hardly slept at all," on and on. And realized, "Ooh, I need to pivot and tell a different story." And so, of course, I didn't change the story to, "Oh, I feel so rested," because I didn't. What I pivoted to was what I wanted. I really want to sleep well. Why do I want to sleep well? Because I want to wake up early feeling great. I want to come to the podcast with a clear head and be able to think quickly and be articulate. All the things that were missing when I was overtired, I would just start pointing that focus at those things. I wasn't experiencing them in that moment. But they were what I wanted to experience, and they were why I wanted to experience better sleep. And that seems to have helped a great deal. I'm sleeping great.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a nice,
really
that's a big victory, the way you describe that you came through and found that way to basically get yourself to believe that you were allowed to sleep and that you could be rested and wake up refreshed. That was really good.
Well, I think it's so important too. And it's the thing that's made the impact on me just even so much in the past year is that idea of recognizing when you've got this inner dialogue going on about the way things are.
Yeah.
making quotes in the air, the way things are, like
right.
That's how it is. And recognizing that little story that's going on and then changing it. I think we all do this, but it's just no one could say the story I was telling was not true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was my truth. It was reality to me at the time. I only slept 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I feel tired, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, these things are the way it is. They're not the way I want it to be. And that's where the pivot comes in and has so much power. And it takes practice.
I was also noticing something while you read that section, and even while you were telling your story there about what happened with the insomnia that you experienced, which is there are two different directions of attention that we go through as we're learning the Abraham method. I'll call it the Abraham method, the Abraham approach to the law of attraction. And the particular points within the Abraham method that I will point to include the idea of upstream and downstream, where you're in that boat, and if if you're paddling upstream, you're paddling against the current, you're working really hard, and you're not getting anywhere, and as it turns out, everything you want is actually downstream, so if you just let go of the oars, it'll take you where you want to go. And kind of juxtaposed with that, we have the concept of energy and of good feelings versus bad feelings. Good feelings are high feelings. Bad feelings are low feelings. So we describe how we want to work our way up to the high feelings. So we are basically trying to train ourselves to work our way up to the high feelings by letting go of the oars so we can go downstream. Do you see what I'm saying? There's like a contradiction. We have two different directions going on there. Mm-hmm. There's the direction of reaching for the high energy, and there's the direction of letting go of the oars and flowing downstream, which really what it comes down to, if you let go of the oars, you flow up to the high levels. And that makes me wonder, maybe we're talking about the high levels in a way that works against ourselves. Maybe it's yet another form of limitation. Maybe we should stop talking about them in terms of climbing up to them.
Ooh. Well, and something else I noticed is that what you just said, you said everything we want is downstream. Mm-hmm. And the first time I ever heard that concept was directly from Esther. And the phrase was, nothing you want is ever upstream.
Right.
And I thought, here we go with the negative and positive.
There you go, yeah.
Right? And you're right. That's really interesting because we kind of paint this picture of a mountain to climb to get up there.
Yep.
And there is no struggle to get to the good feeling thoughts if we let it be easy and we notice that they're downstream.
So maybe we need to start thinking about high energy level as the easy place to get to. And the hard place to get to is the low level, the depression level, the sadness, the anger, the frustration. Those are the ones that take all the work.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because think of some of the common phrases and words that we use to describe both of those things. It's like I'm reaching for a better feeling thought,
yeah,
or I'm sinking down into depression.
Yeah.
It seems easier to sink than to reach.
It does.
Yeah. So you've given me some good language things to play with.
Yeah. I'm going to be playing with it too because I think we've stumbled upon a major form of resistance that almost all of us have, probably all of us have, and we didn't know about it.
Very interesting. Yeah. Just our language is so important.
It is.
So important to understand, how to create language that is more positive and more anabolic. And we can do it with a lot of little tweaks we can make. I like the positive one a lot. We should talk about that sometime. There's so many little easy tweaks to make that will raise our energy level automatically.
I think it's really all about being oriented toward finding them. That's what I've been trying to do. That's why I keep trying to turn negative phrases into positive phrases. I'm trying to find the positive ones because once I find them, they are easier consistently. Easier
and clearer. So much.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, this has been good. I don't think we're going to get through the next section, so I'll kind of cut off there. But before we leave, I want to give you the chance to reach out to people or actually have people reach out to you because sometimes we need to have a person to talk to directly. So if someone wants to talk to a coach directly, how do they reach out to you, Cindie?
Well, they can find me online at cindiechavez.com, CindieChavez. And you can find me on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook with that same name, Cindie Chavez. And so I would love it if you would reach out and say hello. Say that you heard the podcast and give us some feedback. That would be wonderful. Just touch base and connect.
And I would love it if we get to do this again tomorrow. You want to do it again tomorrow?
Yeah, let's do it tomorrow.
All right. Well, then we'll invite you all back as well next time. You're on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.